Alright, so before we get into this video, I want to make a little note. I actually already recorded and edited this video, and since I have made this video, we got this very aggressive move to the upside. I decided to still post this video. I'm not going to remake my video just because we got another wick to the upside. Just keep in mind that this has happened since recording this video, and when you're watching the market cipher portion of this video, just keep in mind that some of the bullish potential that I was seeing is starting to kind of play out. Things are taking another turn to the upside, including the 1 hour money flow getting another move up. We'll have to see how this plays out. If this just ends up being a massive wick to the upside, then some of my bearishness is still valid, but we'll have to see. I mean, I think if we close a weekly candle significantly above 40K, that does significantly change how I look at things. But if we start wicking back to the downside, then nothing really new. We're just wicking the highs again. We'll have to see how this plays out. But yeah, I think the analysis of my video still stands. So without further ado, let's get to the video. All right, happy Saturday, everybody. Yesterday, Bitcoin got another move to the upside to put in a new yearly high. And right now, it does seem like it is trying to hold support on top of this pretty key level right here. So we'll take a look at Bitcoin. I want to make an update, go through how things are looking, both in terms of price action and in terms of market cipher. And we'll try and determine, is Bitcoin going to blast through 40K and continue this uptrend that has been on this, what was a very aggressive uptrend that has turned into now kind of this just sideways channel, kind of slowly crawling up. Are we going to break to the upside, break above 40K, and then start reaching for some of those higher resistances? Or are we going to break to the downside and finally get that retrace that I think would be so easy to get, considering all the things that we have below us? So the last Bitcoin video I made was on November 25th, so that was about a week ago. And if I go back to that time, we were somewhere around this area. And I was expecting another move to the upside at this point. I noted the bearish things we were seeing, the fact that Bitcoin was barely able to put in higher highs, the fact that we were running into some key resistance, and on a lot of time frames, we were seeing some top-ish signals, especially on this 4 hour. But I did say that I thought we could get another move to the upside, considering there were some resistance levels above that we had not tapped yet. First off, the Binance wick, this high right here, was different than Bybit's. So when I made the last video, we had taken out the Bybit high. We did not take out the Binance high, and we actually didn't do that until yesterday. And we also had this point of control that I have marked out on both exchanges. This is just the value area of the bull market price action, essentially. The point of control lines up right around 38.8K. So yeah, we ran into that significant resistance level, and right now it does seem like we're trying to hold some kind of support on it. Actually, on Binance, it looks like we're holding resistance on it because the Bybit and the Binance one are different. So yeah, we're actually kind of holding resistance on the Binance one. We're holding support on the Bybit one, which, really I don't think means much. It just shows that we're kind of sandwiched in between two important levels. So because of that, I wouldn't say it's, too bullish that we're right now holding support on this. Number one, since this is a very small, insignificant range. And two, we are holding resistance on the Binance one. That is something I didn't really notice. So either way, we did get above the point of control, and right now we are I guess showing a bit of uncertainty here. It doesn't really look clear which way Bitcoin wants to go. We're just kind of ranging in between two very important levels. Not much we can get from that. So another thing that I want to mention is we did technically get bullish breaks above, what I would call daily market structure points. So even on Binance, this wick was untouched until yesterday. And yesterday we got to move above there and have maintained price action above that level. So we did get a daily close, a daily candle close above that level. It was technically a bullish break, but it wasn't really a strong one. It wasn't a terrible one either. But if you take a Fibonacci tool and just kind of look for the midpoint of where we broke above to the high of the wick. This orange line right here is the 0.5 retracement, or it's the midpoint of that move, and you can see that we closed the candle below that point. So, that shows that the candle body is smaller than the candle wick. Not a great sign for a close, but also it wasn't a terrible close either. So not a great break, not a terrible break. But, another thing that you could look at is, are we potentially finding resistance on this point of control? And, the fact that we did wick above it and then close below it on the daily time frame on both exchanges, actually, I think, although it was a very slight close below that level, actually, it was a very slight close above that level. But, regardless, this was barely a close above there. And if you're looking at this on the daily time frame, if we start to dump from here, and we don't actually close a daily candle significantly above here, you would probably look at this and say we found resistance on this point of control on the daily time frame. And just looking at the Binance close real quick, same deal. We closed below the 50% point, but it's not looking like a terrible break either. But that brings me into my next idea, which is basically just looking at this as a potential range deviation. So we have this giant range that we've been trading in. You can say we kind of had two ranges here. The first range being like from this high to this low. We traded in there for a little bit, and then we kind of broke above. So, we kind of got two sideways ranges here. I know this is also a channel, so you could look at this as a channel, but, in terms of a range, I think that this right here does have potential to just be a range deviation. So maybe we deviate the high of the range, and then if we break back into it, you could see a move back down to possibly the low of the range, maybe even lower, since we have reason to go lower, I believe. And I do think it would be better if we want Bitcoin to continue on this extended move to the upside. I think it would definitely be better if we retraced before trying to break above 40K. Because, I think it'd just be best to get the retracement out of the way first. I think even if we break above 40K right now, there's a good shot that at some point in the future, we probably will at least retrace down to, this point. There's just too many things that need to be taken out in this area. We got liquidity down below this channel. We have inefficient price action. We have a very significant range that we just broke out of and that we have yet to retest. So even if we do get another pump to the upside, I think it's likely that we will get a retrace at some point. And, I don't really care which way we go, but if we break above 40K, I would be looking at it through the lens of, okay, I'm looking for the next sign of bearishness, because at that point, I think there's a good chance we, come down for this retracement. So, yeah, whether we do that now, get the retracement now, and then continue on our way, or if we break above here and then look for that retracement later, I think we probably will at least retrace down to this, old range at some point before really continuing upside. So that's pretty much my price action analysis. Not too much has happened. Really all that's happened is we've put in another high and now we've tested the point of control. So now let's take a look at market Cipher and see if anything has changed with that. So the weekly time frame, money flow is still putting in higher highs, and it looks like we could see this weekly momentum wave top out at some point soon. However, we are still seeing that outward curve with the VWAP. This outward curve kind of shows that the VWAP is reluctant to cross over the zero line and is kind of showing weakness for the bear side. So it kind of makes me think, even if we do print a red dot here, there's a pretty good chance that, it ends up turning around at some point. Even if we do dip down into the red, which I would expect to happen if we do get a retrace, it's not looking super bearish, for the long term. It looks like we might just need a retracement here, especially since money flow is still putting in higher highs. It looks like maybe money flow just needs to come down. Maybe momentum needs to come down a bit before we actually get that continuation. And, again, this is the weekly time frame, so I'm kind of thinking pretty far ahead here, but just the fact that we are seeing this VWAP show signs of weakness and the money flow is still putting in higher highs makes me not feel super bearish about this weekly time frame. I think it, at worst would call for a retracement, and, at best maybe could show that the VWAP won't even cross over the zero line. Maybe we actually get continuation here. Now looking at the daily time frame, the momentum wave is still putting in higher highs locally, and it looks like we actually did get above this wave right here. So that's interesting. That's something I wanted to see in my last video. Even though it doesn't mean too much, because we still do technically have divs from here, I think this is, somewhat of a sign of strength, the fact that momentum wants to get above this previous high. I think if we saw like a continued direction and bearishness on this daily time frame, like if we kind of continued this trend, it would have been more bearish, especially if we started to see the money flows start to curve over as well. But we're really not seeing many signs of bearishness here other than, this obvious bear div that we're seeing from that first momentum wave. And, money flow right now is technically at a lower point than it was back here, which shows that, we may have our first signs of a bearish div with money flow. Now, it is not a strong bearish div at all. I mean, money flow is very thick in the green at this point, but this could be the first sign that, okay, maybe we do actually need a retracement. The bearish divs with momentum haven't really given us much. We've kind of just continued putting in higher highs. But maybe now that the money flow is potentially showing a slight divergence, maybe that could be a sign of a retracement. Now we'll have to see how this money flow ends up. The daily candle could close today, and maybe this ticks up and we don't print a bear div. So we'll have to see how that develops. But, ultimately this momentum wave right now doesn't look like it wants to top out. The white part is widening, and the VWAP is putting in higher highs in the green. We got like a little retracement here, but it never crossed the zero line. Even though a lot of the lower time frames are kind of screaming retracement right now, the daily time frame is kind of putting up a fight. The daily time frame doesn't really look like it wants to retrace right now. But, we can look at lower time frames and see if maybe they will cause a retracement regardless of what the daily time frame says. Going down to the 4 hour, again, we see this trend continue where we put in another higher high and money flow puts in another lower high. This is a pretty bearish sign if I've ever seen one. Money flow pretty much on a steady decline here as price has been on a steady incline, but it's barely been able to put in higher highs. It's kind of been wicking the highs all over the place. Now, granted, it's also been wicking the lows. Like, there's been a lot of uncertainty here, but we are seeing yet another bearish div on the 4 hour print. Even a slight momentum div as we put in this last high. So yeah, the 4 hour definitely looks bearish. Not really much else you can say about that. Now going down to the 3 hour, we do see a similar thing here. We see a trend of declining money flow and declining momentum. But, a slight difference from the 4 hour. Right now, the money flow on the 3 hour is actually in the red. And if we zoom in here, it looks like it could be in a slight uptrend at the moment. And momentum is also in a slight uptrend right now as well. It is putting in higher lows below the zero line and is putting in higher lows above the zero line. But, again, we do see momentum divs from these previous waves on the top. So that's also something to mention. But, it's interesting that the 4 hour time frame, it looks like the money flow is kind of topping out where it's starting to curve over. But on the 3 hour, it looks like it could be bottoming out a little bit. It's not a super strong trend. Like, I wouldn't expect this to definitely continue this trend and get across above the zero line. And especially looking more locally, how right now money flow and the VWAP are kind of flopping over. And by flopping over, I just mean we're seeing that outward curve effect. So the money flow is starting to curve outwards. The VWAP started getting this move to the upside, but then kind of chopped back down. So it's not showing that it wants to cross over just yet, and it's kind of showing a bit of uncertainty, but it is interesting that the money flow on a 3 hour is still in the red, whereas the 4 hour looks like it's kind of topping out locally in the green. And I've already looked through Market Cipher before I made this video, so I can say before looking at any other time frames that we are seeing a lot of discrepancies across some of these time frames specifically. And you'll see what I mean when I click on the 2 hour. So the 2 hour time frame, for some reason, the money flow is looking pretty dang bullish, at least locally. If I zoom in here, you can see that locally money flow has put in a higher high. This money flow was on the trend that the 4 hour and the 3 hour were on, where we saw that declining money flow, clearly putting in bear divs as price is putting in higher highs, momentum as well, getting those divergences, just kind of overall putting in lower highs. But now all of a sudden we see money flow getting this very aggressive move to the upside. So, this is very interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is like a very bullish sign because we still technically could put in bear divs from back here, but the fact that we are putting in higher highs locally is somewhat a sign of strength. And we'll have to see if other time frames are kind of agreeing with this, or maybe this is just an anomaly. Maybe we're only seeing this on like one time frame. But it is interesting that the 2 hour money flow looks really bullish right now. But you do have to also look at other things. The VWAP looked like it attempted to cross over. We started getting this retracement with momentum. It looked like it wanted to clip up, maybe get some continuation, but the VWAP flopped over. We started to see that outward curve, and it basically just said, nah, I'm not going to cross over just yet. But the money flow is still putting in higher highs, which is very interesting. So, I'm not going to put too much weight on this unless I see other time frames back this up. So let's investigate further. The 1 hour is starting to look a bit more like the other time frames. We're still seeing that overall bearish direction in money flow. We're still technically seeing that bearish direction in momentum as well. It's kind of putting in lower highs. But also maybe something that you could consider is maybe since the 2 hour is looking very bullish, if it can kind of keep that up, maybe it can give a little bit of bullishness to this 3 hour. Maybe that could then play into the 4 hour where we start to see this money flow wave actually get some continuation rather than curling over right now. I guess that's a possibility, but the 1 hour right now is not really backing that up. In fact, it is kind of putting in a lower high locally. And was that a bear div? Yeah, it was a slight bear div. So as price put in a higher high, money flow put in a slightly lower high. We also saw a divergence with momentum here as well. So yeah, I'd say the 1 hour isn't really backing up the potential bullishness of the 2 to 3 hour. But we can go down to the midterm time frames and see if there's any hope down there. 45-minute, kind of looking a bit uncertain. It looks like we also have a very slight bear div here, but that could change if money flow gets one more push to the upside. We are seeing divergences with momentum, and you can kind of see it starting to curl over like this. The last time we kind of saw that was back here, and I would be willing to bet that we got some kind of a retracement there, and we did. So looks like momentum curling over could point to a retracement, but money flow is looking kind of uncertain. We'll have to see how that develops. But when you get down to the 30 minutes, this is where you start to see the money flow curling over as well. So we did get divergences on this 30-minute as well. Money flow put in a slightly lower high. Now we're seeing everything start to curl over to the downside. And if we go down to the 15-minute, we can kind of see that as well. Overall, money flow is just putting in lower highs and then crossing back down into the red. Now, it is kind of holding support in the red. It's like getting very shallow moves into the red and slightly putting in higher lows, but overall the direction from the top looks a bit stronger than the direction from the downside. At this point, just looking at this, would be probably willing to bet that the money flow ultimately will go down rather than up, just because we're seeing such strong direction, and we're also seeing that direction with the momentum waves, whereas on the low end, momentum is just kind of like flattening out. You could maybe say we got a bit of direction here, but with the money flow not really backing that up, I wouldn't put too much weight on that. It looks like right now market Cipher as a whole is taking a turn to the downside on these medium-term time frames. Now, I don't think that necessarily means that the top is in, right? We could continue this trend where maybe we get a little retracement and then put in another slightly higher high. That's been the trend this entire time since we've been in this channel. So, yeah, I'm not necessarily saying the high is in here, but I think there's a higher likelihood of the high being in now as opposed to the last time I made a video, just because we took out pretty much all the significant levels that I was watching at that time. I didn't like the fact that this high was left untouched, so that's why I wasn't really calling this a high or this a potential high. I was thinking that we'll probably get another move to the upside, and we have now gotten that, and we are seeing continued bearish signs after that. And the fact that this could just be a deviation of the high of the range. I think there's a higher likelihood that this is the high right here, or that we're going to put in the high soon. Maybe we get another move to the upside like this, but we'll have to see how things develop. If somehow this 3-hour money flow can get a aggressive move back into the green, and if we start seeing the 4-hour kind of print continuation signs, like if this VWAP starts to curve up with some nice inward curve, if this money flow starts putting in higher highs, who knows? Maybe we will attempt to break 40K, but yeah, just in my opinion, I think that is the lower probability scenario. I think there's a lot of things pointing to us getting a retracement pretty soon here. But that's just my opinion. If you have a different opinion on this price action, maybe leave it in the comments. I'd like to hear what you guys think of this. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to go over in this video. So thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and leaving a comment. I really appreciate all of the support on my channel. And I will see you all in the next one.